The history of Sony Corporation dates back to 1946, when Japan was going through a most trying time in the aftermath of World War II. A capital of $527 and a 7-man staff. That was in fact all the resources we had with which to launch an enterprise. But even in those years, we already had a firm operating principle of opening up new markets with unique new products. The Sony building in Ginza, Tokyo. Its salons are always crowded with many Japanese and visitors from all over the world, enjoying themselves operating and handling various Sony products. Now, let's review some of the highlights in our pioneering product development efforts. Sony put on the market the first tape recorder in Japan in 1950, the first transistor radio in Japan in 1955, the world's first transistor TV set in 1960, the 5-inch micro TV set in 1962, and the world's first all-transistor portable video coder in 1963, the Trinitron color TV developed in 1968, Sony's trademark has been registered in over 170 countries and territories throughout the world. Sony products live up to the confidence of all peoples around the world.
doing recording, I was using the Webcore recorder, and I shortly thereafter moved up to Sony. The first Sony recorder I had was the 600. So I'd like to take you through some of the Sonys I worked with and some of the other units that I thought would be of interest.
This is one of the first Sony recorders available in the United States, available in 1959. The unit weighed 45 pounds. It recorded stereo half-track. It would not record quarter-track, but it would play back quarter-track and had a 2-track and 4-track head adjustment. It also had a stereo and mono playback switch. The unit is very sturdily built. One of the unusual features that they mention on this unit is that it does automatically demagnetize the heads. The unit runs 7.5, 3 3/4. Interestingly, the various lights come on and off if you're doing stereo or mono. As with other Sony recorders, with this kind of mechanism, rewind and fast forward is not very fast. Classic VU meters, and had a huge portable stereo speaker system that came with it. It had two 12-inch JBL speakers. This had a set of internal speakers as well as a large set of external speakers. It was interesting how they provided different color to each meter, with black on the left, red on the right. This was a Sony 300. This was the first semi-professional unit that I used. This unit was bought in 1962 by the Alpine High School Band, and it was what got me started in doing semi-professional recording. Ran about $400 new from 60 to 1963. It had a very good metering system. It also was a 4-track and 2-track. It had some limited control in your bias. Its system playback was internal. You can see in the back the microphones that Sony sent with this unit originally, which the Alpine Band did use at that time. They sounded okay. Over here we have one of the early Sony 777 recorders. Again, a 3-motor unit, good solenoid control. This is a Sony deck, love the take-up reel.
The Sony 263 deck, which was released in 1962, used by us as a source deck for making duplications of tapes back in the 60s. Its mechanism was basically the same as that was on the Sony 600, the 260, and many of the other models of that time. You can see it here in a picture when it was in our studio, built into the console. Here you have both the amplifiers. We went with the Sony 262 decks, and this was before they did the meters. This is the Magic Eye. We also have below that Sony amplifier that went with some of these series back in that same period. This is a Sony Tapecorder 102 that came out in 1963. Cost less than $129.50, they say. It was a 2-speed unit, mono unit, basically used for dictation and other portability. The unit could also be used as a public address system. After I began working with Balco and was able to sell Sony Superscope products in the Alpine area, this was one of the first models I sold, which was to the Brewster County Court. This is the original 8-track recorder that we've had in the collection. Actually, it's not been a collection, it was actually used back in the 60s, and we still retained it. This is the Sony 600, and
This was a unit that I used to do on-location recording around Alpine and at Saul Ross through all the college years, recording the Saul Ross band. This unit is a quarter-track stereo, and being a single motor, your rewind and wind times are not very good. One of the things that I really loved about this recorder was the fact that you could mix the microphone in line in each channel, so you had four controls. You could also monitor through the tape and source, and then you had a line out that you could control. The Unit 777 was Sony's answer to the Ampex 600 series. This particular unit came out in 1966. It had come out as early as 1961, but in this form it came out in a limited edition which had upgraded electronics, and this unit came out of a company's boardroom. It was hardly used at all. It had great wind on the motors, and it had an excellent sound. They had a remote control that also matched and works all the functions. And they came out with a portable speaker system, which again, for on location, these were rather heavy, but they all had handles on them. Sony also made smaller microphone mixers like this one up at the very top. Here we have the Sony 260. This again was a unit that we used, and one of the best things for it was that it had a portable speaker system. We could take it with us on a recording session and use it for playback. Again, line speeds for these units with one motor is always really slow. This 3-inch Sony portable is a true consumer unit, but it is very unique in that in addition to having a tape recorder, it has a separate unit that will disconnect unit so that the portable recorder could be taken wherever you wanted to go, and the heavier unit with speaker and amplifier could be left behind. 905 voice command portable tape recorder. Here we have the Sony 350, which is a deck that we used in the early 70s to do duplication. It was handy in that it had source and tape monitoring, so you could see what was going on. Otherwise, it was just a basic Sony transport. The 350 provided microphone inputs
as well as individual volume controls for the inputs. And you could put the unit into record, which was something the playback-only decks prior to this wouldn't do. And this deck and its mechanisms are identical to what is on the Sony 260. This is the Sony 230. It's made in 1967. It uses a real similar deck to what the 260 and some of the 263s had, a little bit newer configuration. It had a built-in amplifier, speaker system that you could spread out. Very classy looking unit. You can see the similar mechanism. There's the 230, and right below it we have the 260. This is the Sony 772, and it is a 2-track mastering machine. It'll run on battery and AC, runs 15 inches per second or 7.5. With its battery pack, you could go on location and cut a record. It had incredible sound and flexibility. Yes, this is a British artist, John Cambridge. This unit was also capable of changing speed with a variable speed control. One of the things they mentioned was the ability to tune this to a piano if they got the speed right. The controls under this unit have from normal and special tape, your variable speed controls. This also had a limiter on the mic inputs. Your outputs had volume control. XLR microphone inputs had headphone outputs. So a very professional unit, built in 1968 to 1970. So again, to have all the variety of controls it has, this unit ran about $750 new. Rewind, fast forward probably weren't anything to brag about, but it was smooth. This particular Sony 630 became very handy because it had a speaker system. It allowed you to do echo. It also had sound on sound. And I used this in the late 1969 to 73 period. This unit was actually available in the 1968 through 70. It cost about $379 list new. But the portable speaker system would actually pack up and be a cover for the recorder. And again, as I mentioned, it only has one motor, so it's not real speedy. Tape counter, which went to 4 digits, really gave a good sound. So for the first time, I was able to play back recordings that I was making for the client on the scene.
Another thing that we've tried to do in the collection is we've worked to add advertisements for the various recorders. This was on the recorder that's here, which is the Sony 630. And we've tried to obtain original magazine copies rather than any Xerox copies. The Sony 854-4, this unit was $1,700. It was basically set up as a quadraphonic playback unit. It also had its own remote control. This is a Sony 854 we're working on to try to see why I won't rewind and fast forward. Everything else seems to be working perfectly. This unit by Sony was made in the early 70s. It is a 3-motor machine, so this was the first time other than a concert tone that I've been able to use a 3-motor machine. And its solenoid controls were really great. It handled the tape without any problem. The great thing about it is you could record in both directions, and this was just a very clean sounding machine. I shared with you the Sony 772, which was an on-location portable recorder. They produced a more professional unit.
The Sony TC510-2 was modeled after the Nagras and looked like it was a competitor for them. Used a lot in the broadcast industry. The unit had transistors. It was solid state. It had a single motor, but it was very professionally produced, and the mechanism was very well done. We have found a price range of $1,850 up to $2,300 for it when it was new. And it was out in 1976, still available, I believe, in Japan until 1986.